Our planet is in perpetual motion, spinning on its axis. We live oblivious to this incredible speed. At the equator, the Earth rotates at over 1,000 miles per hour, faster than the speed of sound. This constant rotation sets the rhythm of life, the architect of our days and nights. It drives our planet's most critical systems. It dictates the flow of our oceans and the direction of our winds. Every sunrise and sunset is a direct consequence of this planetary rotation. Without it, the world as we know it would simply not exist. This spin is a cosmic inheritance from the dawn of our solar system. It is the most reliable clock we have. What if this fundamental pillar of our reality were to suddenly vanish? The rotation of our planet directs the flow of energy across the globe. One significant effect is the Coriolis force, an apparent force on a rotating surface. It deflects moving objects like air and ocean currents. This deflection creates large-scale weather patterns and wind patterns. They transport heat from the tropics toward the poles. The oceans, too, are governed by this spin, creating circular ocean currents. These currents transport warm and cold water across vast distances. These currents are vital for marine ecosystems. Therefore, the Earth's rotation is a critical stabilizing force. It creates the moderate conditions that have allowed complex life to evolve and flourish. It is the single most important factor that makes Earth, Earth. What would happen if the Earth in an instant stopped spinning? The consequences would be immediate, absolute, and catastrophic. Imagine a car crashing into a wall. Everything on the surface of the Earth retains its eastward momentum. We would be flung eastward at a speed of over 1,000 miles per hour. It would be the equivalent of being hit by a supersonic shockwave that would instantly obliterate civilization. The atmosphere would create winds that would dwarf any storm in recorded history. This friction would likely ignite global firestorms. The oceans would surge across the continents in a single colossal tsunami and reshaping the very geography of our world. The long-term consequences would be even more profound. Prepare yourself, for we are about to witness the end of the world as we know it. In the first instant, the world ends. The solid sphere of our planet halts its rotation, but everything on its surface does not. The law of inertia dictates what happens next. Every object in motion tends to stay in motion. At the equator, this motion is over 1,000 miles per hour, directed eastward. Suddenly the ground beneath us is stationary, but we are not. People, animals, buildings, trees, and even the very soil and rocks would be violently flung eastward. It would be a cataclysmic launch into oblivion, a planetary-scale abrasion that scours the surface. It is an event for which we have no true comparison. Everything that is not part of the deep, solid bedrock of the planet would be torn from its foundation. Our cities would be reduced to supersonic projectiles, disintegrating into a cloud of shrapnel and dust, scouring the landscape clean. The very face of the Earth would be instantly and violently erased, leaving behind a barren, polished sphere of bedrock. It would be a world scoured clean not just by motion, but by fire. This great scouring would be the planet's final horrifying act of momentum. While the solid surface is being scoured, the atmosphere above transforms into a weapon. The entire atmosphere would become a global wind moving at over 1,000 miles per hour. It is a solid wall of air moving at supersonic speeds across a now stationary surface. The friction would create heat on a scale that could melt the very rock itself. The sky would literally catch fire. It would act like a planetary-scale sandblaster, further eroding the surface. The sound would be deafening, a continuous sonic boom wrapping the entire planet. The air would be compressed, creating a shockwave that would pulverize anything in its path. The air would become so hot that it would likely ignite, creating a firestorm that engulfs the entire planet. The sky would become a raging, burning vortex of death, stripping the planet bare and sterilizing its surface with fire. But the damage would be absolute and irreversible. What remained would be a thin, scorching, and toxic shroud, devoid of the delicate balance that once sustained life. Simultaneously with the scouring of the land and the ignition of the atmosphere, the oceans would respond. Like the atmosphere, the vast bodies of water that cover 70% of our planet possess enormous momentum. As the Earth stops, the oceans do not. They would continue to surge eastward, creating a single global tsunami of unimaginable scale and power. This would not be a wave that breaks on a coast. It would be the entire ocean lifting up and washing over the continents. The water would travel at the same speed as the Earth's rotation, a wall of water moving at over 1,000 miles per hour. This mega tsunami would be the ultimate geological force. Its sheer kinetic energy would be enough to pulverize coastlines and everything inland for thousands of miles. The water would not just flood the land, it would erode it on a massive scale. It would act like a liquid bulldozer, scraping the continents down to their bedrock foundations. The immense pressure and speed of the water would carve new canyons and level mountain ranges in a matter of hours. The very geography of our planet, shaped over hundreds of millions of years, would be violently and completely rewritten in a single catastrophic event of global flooding. As the water surges across the continents, it would carry with it a slurry of rock, soil, and debris from the initial scouring. This would create a hyper-abrasive mixture that would grind the surface of the planet with even greater efficiency. The heat from the friction would be so intense that much of the water would flash into steam, adding to the chaotic, superheated atmosphere. The world would become a maelstrom of supersonic winds, scorching steam, and a globe-spanning flood. It is a vision of hell, a planetary-scale apocalypse born from the simple cessation of its spin. The Earth would be drowned and burned at the same time. Eventually, the water would slow, its energy dissipated through friction and the immense turbulence. But it would not settle back into the ocean basins we know. A new force would now govern its distribution gravity. Without the centrifugal force from the Earth's spin, which causes the planet to bulge at the equator, water would be free to migrate. It would flow from the equator towards the poles, where the gravitational pull is slightly stronger. This would be the final dramatic reshaping of our world. The immediate, violent chaos of inertia would give way to a new, strange, and static equilibrium, as we will soon explore. After the initial chaos, a new reality would assert itself. The laws of physics have only been catastrophically altered. Before the stop, the Earth's constant spin created a centrifugal force, causing it to bulge. Now that balance is shattered, the centrifugal force vanishes. Gravity pulls everything towards the center, seeking a perfect sphere. The rock would begin to adjust. The equatorial bulge would start to collapse, triggering powerful earthquakes for years. The planet settles into a more spherical shape, unleashing tectonic fury. Volcanic activity would erupt on a planetary scale, everywhere. The ground would be anything but stable, caught in planetary reshaping. This change is key to the next phase. The oceans must contend with this new gravitational landscape. The oceans are about to embark on a great migration, driven by gravity. With the centrifugal force gone, gravity becomes the sole master of the seas. On a non-rotating perfect sphere, the gravitational pull is strongest at the surface points closest to the planet's center of mass. These points are the poles. The equator, which was once the location of the highest sea levels due to the bulge, is now gravitationally uphill. The water, which had previously washed over the continents in a chaotic surge, would now begin a much slower but equally relentless journey. It would start to flow away from the equatorial regions and drain towards the north and south poles, seeking its new gravitationally stable home. This would be a migration on a scale that is honestly difficult to envision. Trillions of tons of water would begin to abandon the tropics. The process would not be instantaneous like the initial tsunami, but a steady, massive flow that would last for months or even years. As the water drained away from the equatorial belt, it would expose vast tracts of the ocean floor. The mid-Atlantic ridge, the East Pacific rise, and countless seamounts and abyssal plains would emerge from the depths for the first time in billions of years. A new muddy and saline landscape, previously crushed under miles of water pressure, would now be exposed to the scorched, thin atmosphere. As this water moves towards the poles, it would begin to pool in the higher latitudes. The coastlines we once knew would become meaningless. The water would creep inland, submerging northern Europe, Siberia, Canada, and the entirety of Antarctica under a new, deep ocean. The migration would continue until a new equilibrium is reached. The water would settle into two enormous distinct bodies, one centered on the North Pole and the other on the South Pole. These polar oceans would be incredibly deep, far deeper than the Atlantic or Pacific we know today, as they would contain almost all of the planet's water. The consequences for the planet's surface would be absolute. The world map would be completely redrawn. The familiar shapes of our continents would vanish, replaced by a new and alien geography. The planet would be effectively divided into three distinct zones. There would be a northern ocean and a southern ocean, separated by a single continuous belt of dry land that circles the globe at the equator. This process, driven by the simple physics of gravity, would mark the final dramatic reshaping of the planet's surface. the violent chaos gives way to a new, strange, and permanent topography, a world split in two by water and land. The great migration of water is now complete. The Earth has found its new gravitational balance. The result is a world that would be unrecognizable to us. Where there were once 7 continents and 5 oceans, there is now a single globe-girdling supercontinent and 2 colossal polar oceans. This would be the largest single landmass in Earth's history. A continent named Gaea Proxima, or perhaps something more fitting, like Equatoria. This equatorial supercontinent would be a harsh and alien world. The landscape would be a desolate, flat plain of mud and salt, punctuated by the dramatic mountain ranges of the mid-ocean ridges. Meanwhile, the poles would be drowned. In the north, the Arctic Ocean would swell, swallowing all of Canada, Russia, and northern Europe. In the south, the continent of Antarctica would become the seabed of the equally vast Southern Ocean. The world would be cleanly divided, a belt of arid land at the equator and 2 deep, dark oceans at the poles. This new arrangement of land and water is a fundamental alteration of the entire planetary system. The new Earth is a world of stark, silent simplicity. The violent reshaping is over and a new static geography has locked into place. The equatorial supercontinent, a wide belt of salt-encrusted seabed and old continental highlands, now circles the globe. It is a world without familiar coastlines. There are only 2 coastlines, the northern and southern shores. The interior of this supercontinent would be an extreme desert. Without the moderating influence of oceans, moisture would be unable to travel far inland. The newly exposed oceanic crust would be salty and toxic to most plant life. The landscape would be a monotonous vista of cracked mudflats and towering black volcanic ridges. The 2 polar oceans would be equally alien, deep, dark, and still. Without Earth's rotation, there would be no ocean currents. The waters would be largely stagnant, turning the abyssal depths into a lifeless void. The rhythm of the seas would fall silent. This is the new stage upon which the next act of our planet's drama will unfold. How the sun's energy interacts with this new, stationary world will determine the next chapter of its existence. With Earth's rotation stopped, one side now faces the sun in endless day, the other in perpetual night. The sunlit side becomes a furnace, temperatures soaring beyond anything ever recorded. The ground bakes, water boils, and the atmosphere turns into a superheated, lifeless haze. Meanwhile, the dark side freezes, plunging into a cold deeper than any polar winter. This creates a massive thermal imbalance, one hemisphere scorched, the other frozen. Air rises on the hot side, sinks on the cold side, driving a single monstrous global wind. Gone are the gentle breezes and jet streams, now a permanent gale rages from day to night. At the boundary, the twilight zone, superheated and superchilled air collide, spawning storms of unimaginable violence. The atmosphere becomes a realm of chaos with permanent planet-wide destruction. The sun, once life-giving, now rules with absolute tyranny. The planet is split in 2, a burning day side and a frozen night side. On the day side, oceans boil and the land is parched under a relentless hazy sky. Winds rip moisture away, hurling it toward the twilight zone. There the air cools rapidly, unleashing a ring of eternal violent storms, lightning deluges and erosion on a planetary scale. Beyond the storms, the night side is a silent, frozen wasteland, with air so cold that even carbon dioxide snows from the sky. Earth is now 3 zones, fire, ice, and a narrow band of endless storms. Nowhere is safe. Each region is utterly hostile. The planet's once delicate climate is replaced by a brutal, lethal engine. The sky is now a conveyor belt of destruction. Any life that survived the initial chaos now faces extinction. Plants on the day side are scorched and boiled. On the night side, they freeze and shatter. Photosynthesis fails, and the biosphere is annihilated by heat and cold. The green of continents vanishes, replaced by scorched earth and frozen wasteland. Oceans fare no better, boiling on the sunlit side, frozen solid on the dark. Without sunlight or circulation, marine life collapses. The oceans become sterile tombs. The atmosphere and oceans turn toxic and stagnant. Oxygen disappears and the cycles of life grind to a halt. Earth becomes a dead rock, its living systems severed. The planets spin, once the engine of life is gone, and so is life itself. The familiar cycle of day and night is gone. Now a single day lasts a year. One side faces 6 months of scorching daylight, then 6 months of frozen night. The sun hangs motionless in the sky, then slowly sets over weeks as the planet orbits. No dawn, no dusk, just a slow, brutal transition from fire to ice. Time itself is redefined, weeks and months lose all meaning. Life, once tuned to a daily rhythm, is unmoored. The slow crawl of the Terminator is the only change, a creeping wall of twilight. For any survivors, the psychological toll would be immense. Endless light, then endless darkness. The world is now a place of static extremes, not cycles. The only event is the slow, relentless march from day to night. The year-long day-night cycle brings a new tyranny. Extremes of temperature that sweep across the planet. As Earth orbits, the subsolar point creeps across the supercontinent, bringing a wave of searing heat. Land bakes for months, then cools as darkness falls, plunging into deep freeze. Ice and gases sublimate, then refreeze, driving violent dust storms and chemical snow. The surface endures months of fire, then months of ice. No moderation, no refuge. The twilight zone is now a fleeting event, not a place. The entire planet oscillates between sterilizing heat and crushing cold. Erosion shatters rock, and the surface is ground to dust. Earth is trapped in a slow, brutal pendulum between fire and ice. Life on Earth is linked to the 24-hour cycle of light and dark. These patterns, known as circadian rhythms, are hardwired into the DNA of almost every organism. They govern our sleep-wake cycles, hormone release, metabolism, and even cellular repair. This internal clock, synchronized by the rising and setting of the sun, is a fundamental pillar of biology. On the new, non-rotating Earth, this pillar has been pulverized. The 6-month day and 6-month night would shatter these ancient, delicate mechanisms. Consider the fate of plants, the foundation of most ecosystems. 6 months of continuous, intense sunlight would overwhelm their photosynthetic machinery, leading to rapid degradation and death. Any plant that survived the day would inevitably starve and freeze in the endless darkness. Animals would face a similar biological crisis, as their patterns of hunting, sleeping, and mating are all tuned to the 24-hour clock. The environmental signals that have guided evolution for billions of years would be gone. This is a biological catastrophe at the most fundamental level. The internal clocks of every living thing would be desynchronized from their environment, leading to systemic collapse, dismantling the biosphere from the inside out. We peer now into the deep future of this silent, broken world. The initial cataclysms are long past. The planet has settled into its new, brutal rhythm. The question that remains is one of ultimate fate. Could Earth find a new kind of balance? Could life, against all odds, re-emerge? Or is the planet doomed to be a barren, sterile rock, a sister to Mars or Mercury? Without rotation, the planet's vital signs have flatlined, and its path forward is one of gradual, irreversible decay. The magnetic field, our invisible shield, would be the first major system to fade away. The protective magnetosphere would collapse, leaving the planet naked and exposed. The solar wind would now directly impact the atmosphere, stripping it away. This would be a slow but certain death sentence for the planet's climate. The oceans would also be slowly lost. Over millions of years, the Earth would become a ghost of its former self, a dry, cold, and radiation-bombed desert world. The planet would be geologically silent. It would become a barren world. The spin was the beating heart of Earth, and without it, the planet has slowly bled out into the void. Our journey reveals a profound truth. The world we know, with its gentle sunrises and predictable seasons, is a product of ceaseless motion. We have witnessed how stopping this spin unravels reality. The Earth's rotation is the master architect of our home. It drives ocean currents, atmospheric winds, and our magnetic shield. It sets the rhythm for all life. The stability we take for granted is a delicate equilibrium. This thought experiment reminds us of our fortune. We live on a masterpiece of celestial mechanics. The spin that protects us is a silent gift from our solar system's formation. It underscores the fragility of our existence. Our spinning home is a miracle, a constant dance. You are standing on a giant spinning sphere, traveling through the cosmos. It is the spin that makes our world a sanctuary. Our planet is a dynamic system. Its turning is the silent heartbeat of our world.